Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. And as always, thank you to all of you out there who watch my videos, who like my videos. A special thanks to my members, which is why I'm doing this video actually, but I'll explain about that in a minute. And thank you to any of you who've supported my channel in any way. If you've bought me a Ko-fi, if you've PayPal'd me, or sent me a super chat. I really appreciate every form of support you've given to my channel. So what we're going to talk about today, this is members snapshot, if you like, number 2. This is a new thing that I've started doing for the members. So members can suggest a case or a subject. It doesn't have to be true crime. As you know, I'm not a sort of a dimensional channel. I chat about all sorts of things, don't I? So you can suggest a case for me to talk about, or you can suggest a subject for me to talk about. Anything you think you find interesting and you think I'll be able to present you an interesting video, short video. They're not deep dives. That's why I'm calling them members snapshots. I just look into it, give awareness for it. If it's a case, sometimes it's cases that people would like to be highlighted because, you know, unfortunately, there's so many cases out there that we don't get to hear much about. You know, not every case is high profile like Nicola Bulley or Summer Wells or Madeleine McCann. Lots of cases are very low profile and nobody gets to hear about them. So if you've got a particular thing you want me to highlight, and as I say, it may not be a case, it may just be a subject that you find interesting, and you're a member. So this is going to be because the members, I've got very, very many members now, which is fantastic. And I like to give a little bit extra to my members. We have a members live every Thursday. I'm serializing my new crime novel, which is exclusively available on the members section. And there are some extra videos in the membership section and photos and things. And membership is only £1.99. I think it says it's €1.99, but apparently if you join from the UK, it's £1.99. I don't know about how it works in other countries. But anyway, it's supposed to be €1.99 a month. So I think it's good value. And always remember, it's cancelable anytime. So if you join for a month and you don't like it, you can cancel. Or if you've got a month where, you know, it's a difficult month, things happen, cancel for that month, rejoin later, it's no problem. Also, I want to thank some of my lovely members and subscribers who have gifted free memberships to people, and that is so kind, especially coming up to Christmas. So kind, so nice to do that. We had, you know, we've had a lot of fun doing that because we were trying to get one particular person his membership. It's a long story, but anyway, you can see it. Jim, he's got his membership now, Jim with the goats. So we had fun with that as well. So thank you to everyone who donated memberships. Okay, so I'm going to turn my little ticker-tacker off now because I'm going to talk about this snapshot. So this is number 2. This is snapshot number 2. And this case, gosh, well, the name of the poor unfortunate girl who's the subject of the case is Tessa Howden. And sometimes people might remember as that she was sometimes called the Sleeping Beauty. This was an awful case. It happened, I think it was in 1986. And one of my members sort of sent me the link to this newspaper article that we're going to look at. But I remember this case as clear as day. I think most girls of my age at the time, most women will remember it because it was awful, you know, particularly awful because it was a girl who was actually murdered in her own bed. Somebody just snuck in through the window and murdered her, and her own father found her the next morning. And I remember as clear as day reading about it. It was in those times when everything was on the news and in the paper. We didn't have like social media where people get their own news. We only got one news. It didn't matter really which channel you watched even. It was the same news that went around. And I remember it as clear as anything because it totally traumatized me, because the thought that you could be just lying in your own bed and then your own father the next morning would come in the next morning and find you dead, strangled with your own tights. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible story. But anyway, it's relevant now as well because her killer, he's at that stage, that parole, because of course this happened in the 80s. I think that was a time when sentences were definitely a lot more lenient than they are now. But let's have a look at it. So my member, she wanted me to highlight it. I'm happy to highlight it, especially because of the the parole status of the killer. So this is Tessa Howden. Goodness me, she just went to bed that night. That was it. She went to bed that night not knowing that she was in terrible danger in her own house. Now, here they're calling her the Sleeping Beauty. Well, they're calling him the Sleeping Beauty killer. That's a bit, I don't, that's not very nice, is it? But anyway, he strangled a young woman with her tights as her parents slept, and he's going to be released after 30 years. So when is it going to be released? Anyway, his name was Gary Taken. The perpetrator is Gary Taken. He did commit an S assault on her, and then he throttled her while she slept just yards from her parents in January 1986. I just remember reading about this, and it totally terrified me. I think probably most women were terrified by it. So apparently they've been, oh my goodness, this was in May 2017. Said the killer is due to be released from jail within weeks. Goodness me, is he out then? Is he walking amongst us now? Oh yeah, so this was in 2017. 31 years on, a letter detailing his release was sent to Tessa's parents. They believe he showed no remorse, and it revealed that Taken could be released within 2 weeks from prison on the Isle of Sheppey. Well, I'm going to look that up. So David, the father, was 77. He found her. He came into her bedroom and found her. And he said they were fighting against this decision for 30 years. Goodness me. So here are her parents, Heather and David Howden. Gosh, when they go to prison, you would just think, well, at least that's it. They've gone to prison. Oh, sorry, that's gone on to something else for some reason. Don't know why it's gone on to that at all, because I wasn't looking at that. Anyway. Where's the photo gone of the parents? Here we go. So it was David who found his daughter's lifeless body. I mean, I don't know how he's managed to even cope with that. Right, this has all gone weird now. Let's have a look. I need to find something else because this is not working properly. Gosh, after all, you get things also. You get things all organised, and it seems to be worse when you have it organised. Now, so yeah, On January the 10th, 1986, David Howden woke. This is a podcast, Murder Town podcast, around 8 a.m. and went downstairs to make some tea. And Tessa was usually the first out of bed. She'd started to work at a job at the local Croydon Advertiser in promotions. So when David noticed she wasn't up, he went upstairs to check on her. He saw she wasn't in bed, but it was dark. So he made his way downstairs, but at the bottom he realised something wasn't right. Before going back up again, just inside her room, he saw her covers piled on the floor, and as he pulled them back, he found Tessa's body on the floor with something wrapped around her neck covered in blood. That's what happened. Now I need to find out what is going on with the killer. Is he out then now? It's just not right, is it? How people who take somebody's life. Oh, there he is, the guy. Let's have a look. I think you can still see it. So this is him. He's so young too. It just reminds, like the way they're dressed and everything, it just reminds me so much. I think I might have been exactly the same age as this girl, because I think that's probably why it would have affected me so much. Gary Taken. Dear me. Let me just see if he's out first before I start reading that. There he is, here again. So if you can hear some, that's my dog. What are you making that funny noise for? Can't find anything here that says if he has been released or not, or were they successful to keep him in prison? Yeah, all it's coming up with on here, it's saying he could be released. Going back to that article again, where's a more recent article? That's a bit annoying. That is annoying. Is he out or not? Because that last article is 2017, so that's 6 years ago. Why is there nothing more? Why is there nothing more recent than that? I wonder. Very strange. Let's have a look at this. What's this for the Film Council? Can we look at this? No, I'm not getting very far here with how strange that there's not much information about the circumstances now. We're just going to go back and have a look at the yeah, and the person who sent me the email, they're saying the same, that it appears that they've been released, but they're not sure. Well, how awful that you can't actually find out. So this guy is probably walking amongst us. You know, now he's served his sentence, her life finished, and she'll never get any of her life back. Let's go. Just gone back to the original newspaper article, because to be honest, that seems to be all there is. Now, on another, let's have a look at this. So basically, that's what happened. This poor girl was murdered in her own bed right next to her parents and never heard a thing. And this story from the true, this is the story of what, there's more to it. So of the actual build up to it. So I want to read a bit of this. So, as the saying goes, home is where the heart is. And for the story of Tessa Howden, that's exactly how she and her family felt about her lovely yet simple home. Tessa was a young and beautiful lady who was working and getting ready to live the life she had dreamed of for so long. Still lived with her parents. But like many other tragedies of people dying too soon, Tessa's young life was going to be taken away from her too early, and her family was going to witness this in the most vicious of ways. This is quite, there doesn't seem to be anything recent, which is a bit worrying. Anyway, she was born to her parents, Heather and David, in March of 1966. So she's a little bit younger than me, actually. She was the second of two siblings. Her older sister, Shirley, born almost 2 years before her. Her parents were ecstatic with her birth, just as they were with their older daughter. But they felt that Tessa made their life complete. They felt so lucky. Here she is again. According to Heather, the girl's mother, I remember thinking how lucky I was when I held Tessa as a baby for the first time. I had two perfect girls who bonded instantly and became firm friends. It would seem life couldn't get any better, and as time passed, things would go pretty much the way they thought it would. So they lived in South London. In Selsdon, South London, in one of 12 houses situated in a cul-de-sac in their neighbourhood. Usually cul-de-sacs were considered safer than regular streets, since cars wouldn't necessarily zoom by in those areas, but they would have to slow down to make their way around. Plus, as an added bonus, many of the children of their neighbours were of the same age as the two sisters. Life was perfect. Heather recalls how not a day went by without a knock on the door with a neighbourhood friend asking, "Can Shirley and Tessa come to play?" Life was perfect. But unexpectedly, their perfect world was going to begin to become riddled in bizarre events and questionable circumstances. Now, I need to add this source is the True Activist. So I'm hoping that it's a reliable source, but there literally is nothing else that I can find to talk about this case. As the years went by, the girls would grow into beautiful young ladies, both focused on their futures and what they wanted to do as they got older. When they began high school, Heather started to notice that things began to go missing in their remotely quiet and safe neighbourhood. But since it was the first time to happen, despite the years they had lived there, she didn't think anything bad of what was going on. Missing items. So she noticed items of underwear, particularly knickers, mysteriously disappearing from the washing line. And that wasn't all, she continues. Then the back door key of our home went missing and we had to get the locks changed. Heather also explains, as our corner garden backed onto woodland, the Cub Scouts hut wasn't too far away, and I'd sometimes hear children playing. Other neighbours were having the same problem, so I brushed off these incidents as silly, childish pranks. But it wasn't nothing. Apparently, it wasn't just childish pranks or kids being kids. In fact, what was going on happened to be something much more sinister than what they could have ever imagined. Tessa, a young teenager at the time, gosh, see, I didn't know about this. My member who's out there, let me know in an email if you knew about this. Tessa, a young teenager at the time, had told her parents that she'd seen a hand and an arm at her window. But despite her parents calling the police to report it, they wouldn't be able to figure out who it happened to be or whether it was something that would happen again. More time passed, bless. More time would pass and there wouldn't be too many notable pranks that would go on any longer in their cosy little area. That was until Tessa had turned 19 years old. Her sister Shirley had finally got married and decided to leave home, allowing Tessa to take her bedroom, which was bigger but also closer to the front. Oh. Tessa happened to be working for the Croydon Advertiser at the time, which was a local newspaper where she was part of the marketing team. They were sending her to Belgium on an assignment, and she was highly excited for her upcoming trip. Research in Belgium. One evening in January of 1986, Tessa happened to be checking out some travel books, checking out areas that she was likely to see on her trip to Belgium. Finally tired, she told her father that she was going to head to her room for the night to get some rest. So on January the 9th, 1986, that night was like any other night in the Howden home. Tessa's father, David, had been at work in his garage all day, while her mum, Heather, had been home taking care of the house as always. Heather made sure to lock up the entire house that night, as she always did, double checking that their doors were all closed and secure. But apparently it wasn't going to be enough to stop the horrors of what was going to happen that night. Dear me, waking up to death. At 8:04 the next day, David decided to go and check on his only remaining daughter that lived with him at home, thinking she had decided to sleep in. And what he was going to find was going to haunt him for the rest of his days. His beloved Tessa was dead, and worse than that, it looked like it had been a brutal and ghastly death that happened right in her bed as she slept. This is what traumatized me. I just imagine my dad walking into my room and finding me there like that. It was, because you think you're safe at home, don't you, with your parents? Heather explains, I woke up to a scream that will haunt me forever. David was standing just inside Tessa's bedroom door, a couple of steps across the landing from ours. His face was white and he said, I don't want you to go in there. Someone killed Tessa. We need to call the police. Heather couldn't move. In that single moment, her husband had uttered the words that no parent would ever want to hear, ever. David quickly called the police, explaining to them what had happened, and within minutes the authorities were at the Howden doorstep to try and figure out what had happened. As police began to examine the house and investigate the possible events that took place, it was reported that Heather had suddenly felt a blast of cold air coming from the kitchen. When the authorities went to check the kitchen door, they claimed that someone had indeed entered their house in the middle of the night and killed Tessa in her sleep. As the police continued their investigation, they would figure out the exact manner in which Tessa had been murdered. Her body had been slumped on the ground with blood covering the front of her body from a slash to her neck. She had a pair of her own tights wrapped around her neck, which is what they believed the killer used to strangle her to death after being assaulted. Oh. So the story went on to make headline news, where she was dubbed as the Sleeping Beauty, which is not nice really, is it? And her killer was named the Silent Killer, since her parents had not heard a single sound while she was being attacked. And more than that, everyone wanted answers as to why someone would attack and kill Tessa just as they did, considering that they had been in a seemingly safe area known by practically everyone who lived in that area. As the detectives began to ask questions about who could possibly have done such a thing to Tessa, they would find fingerprints that would lead them to her killer. Fingerprints, that's what we used to rely on, wasn't it, before DNA? I'm surprised that they left fingerprints because, people knew that about fingerprints, even from, programs like Columbo, about fingerprints. While DNA was not yet at its best, fingerprinting was much more popular, and the prints they would find would lead them back to one person, and he lived just a few blocks away from where Tessa Howden had lived as well. So the fingerprints belonged to Gary Taken. The authorities would figure out that the fingerprints belonged to a man named Gary Taken, so they began looking into him immediately. And what they were going to find was enough evidence to know they had their man. Not only did he live near Tessa all his life, he had even been her classmate when they were very young kids studying in the same school. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Did he target her? Oh, so his room was covered in photographs. It would seem that they would have a case of not only a peeping Tom, but a 19-year-old guy who was eerily, he had an obsession with Tessa. He was eerily obsessive. Not only did he have an array of photos of Tessa glued to his wall, he also had a number of other women's photos plastered side by side to Tessa's. Gosh, not only did Taken have a huge voyeurism fascination, he had finally taken it way too far. It's chilling, isn't it? Not only did Taken have loads of pictures all over his room, but the police would also end up finding Tessa's missing underwear. He also had the key to her back door that had also gone missing from her home, as well as an entire file on her with her phone number and a log of the places she would go and where he would see her. Dear me. Oh, Taken had also had lots of naked photos of women from all over their neighbourhood. Most of the pictures looked like they'd been taken from the windows of their homes that were facing the woods. Taken would even climb trees in order to get a better view of his victims. Oh, his mum claims they were dating. Whether Taken's mum really believed this to be true or not, she had a notebook of her sons that she had found which showed dates and times that he and Tessa had supposedly, I didn't know any of this, had supposedly secretly spent time together. It would be found out later on, though, that this was completely made up and that Taken was actually completely out of his mind, making these so-called meetings up. Tessa did not know him as an adult, nor had she spent any time in Taken's presence, except for that fateful day when he had assaulted and killed her. He says he left her alive. Yeah, he would. Taken himself told police he had let himself in and gone up to Tessa's room. He then said that he had left using her bedroom window because he heard someone moving about the house, but when he left, she was all right. But the investigators knew this was not the case. The detectives who investigated the case reported that Tessa's neck was slashed and she had wounds to her hands as she fought for her life. And he truly strangled her with her own tights right before he would make his getaway. And in one of the most cruel ways possible, his actions would basically rip a family completely apart. It would be 1 year later, in January 1987, that Gary Taken would be given a life sentence for his crime of sexual assault and murder against Tessa Howden. But despite Taken being found guilty, Tessa's father David shares, finding Tessa can only be described as a parent's worst nightmare. It's an image which has never faded and felt like a grenade going off inside me. I will never be the same person I was before. So now now their nightmare is being relived. So when this was done, it's been around 31 years since Taken was put in prison, and throughout all the years that he's been behind bars. Tessa's family always believed that his sentence would truly be for life, but they would receive the devastating news that Gary, taken probably good behaviour, was up for early release despite his life sentence. According to Heather, a life sentence should mean life. What's to stop him murdering another girl? So it sounds like this guy is out, I would say. When they heard the news, David explained, we were utterly horrified. As one of their longest serving life prisoners, the parole board believes that Gary can now be managed in society, but we don't think he can. He has never admitted murdering Tessa, never once contacted us to say sorry. He has shown not 1 ounce of remorse, and I do not believe he has changed. This makes us worry that he could strike again. So after Tessa's horrific death, Gary started SAMM, which means Support After Manslaughter and Murder. And it's because of this group that he and Heather have been able to deal with the murder of their beloved daughter. Taken has been out of jail for 6 months now. So at the writing of this, he'd been out 6 months. They're still petitioning that he be put back behind bars. Unfortunately for the Howdens, he's still free despite living under very strict rules. One rule is that he's not allowed to go anywhere near the Howden home nor the community that they live in. Trying to find happiness after everything. And in spite of it all, the Howdens tried to stay happy and remember good times. They even continue to live in the house where their girls grew up. Now, that must be difficult, continuing to live in the house where the girls grew up and where Tessa was murdered. David shares, how could we leave the memories we had of her behind? We have so many supportive neighbours and friends here too. It would have broken us to move somewhere else, he continues. We have happy times. We do laugh again. That's what SAMM tries to get across to people, that life can be worth living again. Oh, it is nice to see, someone even who's been through that awful thing being positive. These people, they're heroes, aren't they? But Tessa will always be with us. She's part of our family and always will be. There you go. So that is the very sad story of Tessa Howden. And, I hope my member who suggested that, I hope they found that interesting. It's a shame that I can't find anything out about Gary Taken. If anybody knows any more about him, I don't imagine they would have given him a change of name, about where he is or what he's doing, because he'd be still quite young, won't he? In his 50s, I suppose. Anyway, so if you want to join my channel and suggest a case, so this is going to be a members perk now to suggest cases, and not only cases but topics, themes, anything anybody wants me to talk about. Doesn't have to be a true crime thing. So that's a very sad story, isn't it? So I hope it hasn't left you feeling too deflated. If it has, go and find one of the advent calendars where I'm being silly and it might put a smile back on your face. Because, I've got the series of advent calendars as well, building up to Christmas. So remember to live and love very carefully, very wisely. And I'll see you again really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you.